Good. Right. Sometimes you know things, and then sometimes those things just sort of fall into place, and it all sorts of fits together better. And for me, prepping this has felt a bit like that. That things that I sort of knew sort of fell together into more of a coherent sort of picture than they'd been for me before, anyway. And my prayer is that God will use the next however many minutes, I hope there won't be too many minutes, for things to fall into place for you as well. That's all that I can ask. Right, now after last night, I'm safe to ask a different question. How many people follow football, soccer that is? Okay, and how many people, keep those hands up please, and how many people sort of vaguely know the rules? Yeah, vaguely, you know, some people on a pitch, football, goals, that sort of level of stuff, yeah? Okay, so I may use a football illustration in a little while that I hope is helpful. But before we get to that, true or false? Okay, I put it to you, friends, that not only is this true, but this is also true. That God not just values humans, but he values the flourishing of humans. It's right there in the beginning, first page of the Bible, Genesis 1. God makes Adam and Eve, and he says, like, he blesses them and says, flourish, multiply, have lots more. Go out into the world, do stuff, live. It's not that God values sort of static humans. He values the life and the energy and the love and the potential of humans. And we know that he holds that in real value because there's bits in the Bible like Hosea where God speaks through the prophet and says, actually, I want mercy towards people even more than I want sacrifice towards me. I value mercy more than sacrifice. And of course, we see that in Jesus. Because Jesus doesn't insist that we sacrifice to him. In Jesus, God comes and sacrifices himself for us. It's like God will do anything for humanity. Anytime he sees brokenness in people, he longs for it to be fixed. He longs for that pain, that suffering to be repaired and for love to grow. And in one sense, it's summed up in the Hebrew word shalom, which gets translated as peace, but it's more than that. It's peace and life and flourishing and great relationships and joy. And it's all of that flourishing humanity that was God's design for the beginning. So it's not a big surprise that when Jesus, in this sermon, as he talks about the values of the kingdom, that he talks about having a hunger for right relationships, that he talks about those people who are merciful towards other people. He talks about those people who are peacemakers, the ones who go to fix relationships. It's not surprising that Jesus talks about those people and says, yeah, they're connected to God. In this sermon, in this talk of Jesus, as Matthew has given it to us, Jesus invites us all to see that there's a better way to live. He invites us all into heaven to live in the kingdom of the heavens, to live in the kingdom of God. And it's such a contrast to the way people had been reading scripture that in his introduction, he has to say, I'm not doing away with the old stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm not doing away with the law and the prophets. But then he says, it's more than that. It's that plus. He says this, I tell you, that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law or the scribes in some translations, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. It's more, says Jesus. Now, let's get ourselves in the right mind frame. We're going to play a game of righteousness. Okay, anyone up for a game of righteousness? Oh, Nick says no. Okay, thank you, Sonny. Okay, so it's a game though, so you have to play your parts. So over here on this side of the room, you, I'm afraid. Oh no, you're okay. Oh no, hang on. The screens are this way around. Right. Okay, so you, okay, are not being righteous, right? So when I give you a scenario, you have to think of a not righteous way to respond. Is that okay? Now, over here, you in the middle, you are being the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, the established, if there's a law, you better obey it, sort of, right? And over here, the challenge to this block is to, that's really quite pale, sorry. This is a chance for you to think about what Jesus, more than that, righteousness might be in your situation. Okay? Got it? More than righteous, righteous, not righteous. Can I have my slide back, please? Thank you. Okay, so you have to imagine that you are late. You are driving through Warwick, and you are in a 20-mile-an-hour zone. What do? You are late for something that you want to be at. You're driving in a 20-mile-an-hour zone. What do you do? Not righteous, think about it. You might talk to the person next to you. Righteous, you might think about it, talk to the person next to you. Surpassingly righteous, you might think about talk to the person next to you. Okay. Not righteous. What might you do? You might break the speed limit. You might break the law. You might go through red lights. Excellent. Very good not righteousness over there. Okay, what about righteous? Keep to the speed limit. You want to be there, but you don't want to break the rules. So, yep, okay, cool. What about the... You're going to be even later. So, of course, you must. Excellent work. Yes, stick to the speed limit. What about the more righteous than that, the beyond righteousness?
Cross the road. Allowing somebody to cross the road.
Allowing someone to cross the road, but that will make it even later. But that might be a really kind thing to do. Any other? It's really quite hard over here, isn't it? So you could phone up and tell people you're going to be there. Excellent. So if being righteous is about finding the right rule and not breaking it, then it's really quite hard to have a surpassing righteousness. Because like finding the right rule and not breaking it, well, that's sort of as good as you can do. If that's the way you think about righteousness. Jesus says this, I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses this lot, then you're done for. You were bad. I mean, you haven't surpassed that lot. You haven't even met that lot, but unless your righteousness surpasses this. So actually, if righteousness is about meeting a standard or hitting a target, it's hard to see how you can be better than that. So I think, actually, we all read an unwritten word into this verse. I think what we tend to do is read, I tell you, that unless your righteousness score surpasses that of the Pharisees, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. And I think what Jesus meant was, unless your righteousness definition passes that of the Pharisees, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. So, we've assumed a word in there. I should probably take it out because it's not there and we can think about it neutrally. But I think we assume the word, and it's like we hear it as, it's like Jesus saying, well, the Pharisees, they're 95% good, and your task is to be 99% good because you're human and you're not 100% good. And I'll forgive you for the bits that you get wrong anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I think when Jesus says, I've come not just to support the law and the prophets, but to fulfill them, to take them to their full extent, it's like Jesus is saying, unless the definition you have for righteousness surpasses the definition that they have, then you've missed it. And this is thinking hard these days. And a couple of weeks ago, Mike Hood was here, and he said, when Jesus talks about stuff, it's not just here's a nice idea. He said, actually, it really matters. Because Jesus said, the only way to find true life is to trust me, what I do for you and what I tell you. Otherwise, trying to live your own life by your own standards, signing your own death warrant. So I don't think Jesus is expecting us to score 99% or 100% against some fixed level of righteousness, some standard that means we can get into heaven or be in heaven. I think Jesus says that we have to trust him, and that gives us a way to life. And then he explains a bigger way to see righteousness and a bigger way to live. And Jesus does expect us to sign up for that life. Let me make an analogy. Let me make an analogy. In the time of the Euros, when Gareth or Jesus chooses you and puts you on the pitch, you're on the pitch. You're a player in the kingdom of heaven. Now, we were talking about Mr. Kane earlier. How well you play when you're on the pitch, well, that's a different question altogether. But you're on the pitch. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't play well. It's really important for you and for everybody else that you do play well. And Jesus really wants us to play well. for our own good. But the interesting thing is, it's really hard to define what 100% is in terms of playing on the pitch. There's like endless possibilities for people to be more skillful, more perceptive, to see the opportunities, to do things that weren't expected, but actually transform the game and transform life. And I picked this shot because sometimes when you do the most beautiful things, it looks to people who don't understand that you've just fallen over. So, what does Jesus tell us is his way of playing life, of his righteousness? Well, we sort of finished an introduction. What we've heard so far in the series is an introduction as Jesus sort of brushes the principles. It's not dismissing the law and the prophets, but it is bigger than that. And now he's going to give us a whole range of examples. He's going to talk about the way we think about other people, the way we relate well to people who relate badly to us, the way we relate to religious things like prayer and giving and fasting, the way we think and relate about God, how we help others, who we can trust to help us. And today, my real topic, which I should maybe have started about 15 minutes ago, is the first of the case studies, where he says, it's like this. I've told you what it is. This is what it looks like. And Andy talked about it. Righteousness is a tricky word. Right relationing or right relationships is maybe closer to the right sort of feeling for it. So Jesus has told us in our right relationshiping, we should do better than the scribes and the Pharisees. So let's have another game. Let's have a game where we play right relationshiping. So over here, we have people who are going to do no bad in relationships. Okay. No, you're the baddies. You do bad. Do bad in relationships. You're the righteousness of the law and the scribes and the Pharisees. You're going to do no bad. Yeah. You're going to do no bad. And you are going to do surpassing righteousness, surpassing relationship. You're going to do good. Yeah. Okay. Apologize for typecasting over here. Actually, I need Sarah for this as well. Could you come up, please? I want you to communicate an emotional tone to the room.
Okay.
You didn't warn me about the hands?
Indeed. Yeah.
Fair enough. Right. You can stand there and then that's... So I'm going to read a scenario. It's a longer scenario. And Sarah's going to lead you in appropriate emotional involvement. No. Just, you can do ooh and oh, that sort of stuff. Okay. So let me give you a scenario. Your beloved partner, Joe. Now, I carefully picked an either name, so you can go with that whichever you want, right? So your beloved partner, Joe, who'd always seemed almost perfect. You're allowed to live with it as well. It almost seemed almost perfect. Their only fault, if you could call it a fault, was they'd never learned to swim. But then Joe had suddenly vanished into the night, taking with them every penny of your savings. It was an audacious and evil act. And it turned out that they'd been planning it behind your back for years. And it left you penniless. You and your only child, Sam, had nothing. So it's not good for you. But the thing that really hurt was the impact on Sam. Once a picture of innocence and joy, now Sam bore the weight of hunger, of humiliation and peril, the taunts at school about threadbare clothes cut deep. And while their health waned with each passing day of deprivation, and it was all Joe's fault. Then, one day in the park, you coincidentally saw Jo. She was standing on the edge of a surprisingly deep and steep-edged pool. You realized that if they were dead, all the money they'd stolen would revert to you. And all their attention is focused on shouting harshly at a dog swimming in the water. All it would take would be one gentle nudge. So you can sit down now. So, do bad, relationship people. What will you do? Talk about it. Do no bad, relationship people.
Stay away.
Do good, relationship people. Okay. Do bad, people. What would you do?
Take the money and drown in it.
You're doing the nudge, getting the money back. Fair enough. That's probably doing bad. Why? To get the money back?
It's the choice.
Yeah, to benefit Sam. It's a good motive. Like you would have some obviously as well, but like the kid would benefit a lot.
The kid will not.
Okay, fine. Okay, anyone really differ with that?
Yeah.
I'd give him a bag of cement to hold for me.
Okay. I mean, that was the whole point of planting. That was the whole point of planting the can't swim thing at the start. Okay, what about the not do no bad relationship people? What are you doing? You're thinking about it. You might even savor for a moment, imagining that you had done it. But you're not going to do it. Okay. What about you going to do? What are you going to do?
Rescue the dog.
Excellent. Excellent. Rescue the dog. Think outside the box. Anything else?
Forgiveness. So go up to him and say, "I forgive you for everything you've done."
Okay, so go up. Actually try and rebuild a relationship. So whose good were you thinking about? Your own?
The choice.
Child? Oh. Whose good were you thinking about?
Just trying to work out what the law was.
You're just trying to do what you should do. You don't really think about anybody's good. Maybe your own because you don't want to be a lawbreaker. Whose good were you thinking about?
Dog.
The dog? Maybe even the other human involved in the scenario. This is easy, but you might get caught. This is sort of easy. This, as long as you're a strong swimmer, is easy. But if you're going to try and actually do something to mend the relationship, that's hard. You have heard that it was said to the ancients, Jesus continues, you will not murder, and whoever murders will be guilty by the court. And I say to you that anyone who's angry with his brother will be guilty by the court. And anyone who calls his brother a good for nothing will be guilty by the Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin. And anyone who says fool will be guilty of the fire of Gehenna. Now, bracket, fire of Gehenna thing, bit of a sidetrack. We won't go down that this morning, but do ask me questions if you'd like to. But the point is, where's Jesus placing himself in the room? I mean, he's saying, no, I'm not going to kill someone. But I'm not going to be angry with them either. I'm not going to insult them. I'm not going to dismiss their value, because despite the way we might want it sometimes, that other person is at least as valuable to God as we are. And when I say, you good for nothing, empty head, waste of space, what am I doing? I'm putting myself a mile above them in terms of who's important here. I'm judging them. I'm not valuing them in any way. We said at the beginning, what God does is acts to fix stuff. And I'm not doing any of that. And I actually love this bit because, like, anyone who's sort of murderously angry, that sounds like quite a serious thing. That goes to court. Anyone who gives a sort of light slander, that goes to the Supreme Court. And anyone who says, well, they're a bit dull, like, God's going to judge that. Jesus is playing with us here. Like, almost the more trivial the offense, the more serious he's pointing out our consequences. I think we can see the picture by this. The scribe's righteousness is like, don't break stuff. Don't break relationships. Don't break the laws. Just don't break stuff. But Jesus' righteousness goes before that and goes after it. He says, don't break stuff, but like, fix your head so you don't even want to break stuff. If you listen to me, absorb what God is saying to you, then you will value and love that person no matter what they did. And actually, if you love someone, you can be angry with them, but you want to fix it. So you can practice thinking right about others. And then, as well as not breaking things, we can practice fixing things, because that's what God does. And that's what God calls us to do as we enter the kingdom of heaven and live by his way. Jesus continues, therefore, if you are presenting your offering at the altar, and there remember your brother has something against you, leave your offering there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and present your offering. You're heading off to do a good thing. You're giving a donation to God's work. What would the scribes do? They do that. They just go through with a good thing. But suddenly you remember there's a fracture in the shalom. There's a break in the good relationship, a break in the peace and the flourishing. It's really interesting. Jesus doesn't even say that you did anything wrong. He just says that your brother has something against you. Not necessarily your fault. But he says, I desire mercy before sacrifice. He says, go fix it as best you can. Then come back and make your sacrifice, give your offering to God. Think right. What God longs for most is good relationships. Act right. Don't break things. Don't make your brother cross about something that you do, but go out of your way to be loving and caring and fix things. Then come back and give your offering to God. Jesus continues. Settle matters in a friendly way with your legal opponent when you're on your way with him to court. I didn't read that right. Settle matters in a friendly way with your legal opponent while you are with him on the way, so that your opponent doesn't hand you over to the court judge and the court judge to the officer, so that you are thrown into prison. Truly, I say to you, you will not come out of there until you have paid back the last coin. So, what's the obvious right thing to do? Court situation, it's going to be judgment. One person will win, one person will lose. Go to court. I mean, you probably hope you're going to win. That's cool. That's what you do, isn't it? That's the obvious right. But Jesus says, actually, what's more important is you being in good relationship with the person who's against you. So don't let it go to court. Sort it out between yourselves, amicably, friendly, rebuild the relationship before the judge ever gets his wig on. Kill the case because you fixed it. Scribed righteousness, just go through the process. Don't do anything wrong. Be honest in court. Jesus' process, actually, good relationship between us is more important than me getting my settlement. And it might go wrong. Fix things. Value the other. You don't want to lose. You don't want them to lose either. Fix things. We know this is what Jesus would think, because this is the way Jesus lived. He walked around the streets, and when he saw something that was broken, he fixed it. And then ultimately, when the only way to fix it was for him to be totally broken, then he did that too. And he invites us to live with his values as kingdom of heaven people, thinking about people the way he thinks about them, fixing things where we can because we value the other every bit as much as God does. There's a challenge. And when you play this game, living like this, well, there's no 100% mark. It's like being on the football pitch. We can always be more perceptive about how we can help, more perceptive, more capable, more willing and able. So will we get stuff wrong? Will we fall over sometimes and not put the ball in the net? Absolutely. And Jesus says, yeah, good practice. Can we try that again? Maybe we'll get better result the next time. There's no 100%. We just do it. Growing in love and ability and commitment and service all the way through our lives. Jesus' right relationships, I think, look like this. Think right. Don't break things. Fix things. And above all things, those are relationship things. So I think we should ask ourselves, how can we practice training ourselves into this kind of righteousness? How can we practice valuing other people more than ourselves? Is it, someone said in the supermarket queue, they let someone in front of them in the line the other day. Their time at least as valuable as my time. What little things can we do to practice just valuing others more than ourselves? And a second question is there stuff around you, stuff around me, that's broken that we could work on to fix? The scenario of walking up to Sam at the edge of the pond and talking to them rather than giving them a nudge, it's actually quite hard to know what to say. And I think that's the case in lots of these situations where there's brokenness around us. It's hard to know what to do. So can I suggest that we spend time praying, asking God to help us to know how we might go about serving in that situation, helping to mend something? And that might be partly about God changing our hearts so we can see the situation the way He sees it. And it might be that you need to talk through the situation and what you might do with other people, just to bounce off ideas to make sure that what you're intending to do sounds like it might help rather than make things worse, because sometimes with the best intentions, we might do that. And it might be that actually it's too hard at the moment and it's not safe. And this one, you need to just park for the moment and let God do something. But fixing relationships is Jesus' kind of righteousness. It's what it's all about. It's what the kingdom is like. It's what Jesus did and does. And it's what Jesus wants us to do. So that's the first block, set of 3 case studies as Jesus tries to unpack what having a righteousness that's greater than the scribes and Pharisees' righteousness looks like. Over the next weeks, we'll have more of these case study illustrations of what it is like to live with Jesus' kingdom values, more ways as to how we can reshape how we live our lives so that we play well on the pitch. Can I pray? What a privilege to be invited onto the team, to be on the pitch, to be part of the kingdom of heaven. Jesus, I just long for you to fill us with the power of your Spirit to transform our game, to make us more perceptive in how we understand ourselves and our own abilities and the opportunities we see around us. Help us to live well, to play well, to flourish in your hands. Amen.